welcome to the October 2nd, 2023 work session of the Lewiston City Council. Our first order of business is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would please stand and join us in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, the flags at the corner. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Our next order of business is citizen comments. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the council on agenda items or other items they wish to bring to the attention of the council. Citizens are encouraged to discuss operational issues in advance with the mayor in consideration of others wishing to speak. Please limit your remarks to 3 minutes. Also, the Lewiston City Council pledges to practice and promote civility within the governing body, advocating for civil engagement, respecting others and their viewpoints, and finding solutions for the betterment of the city of Lewiston. So with that, I will open up citizen comments. If you're here to provide comments, you'll have 3 minutes. We have microphones up in the ceiling, the small round speaker-looking things. And remember to project your voice, speak up loudly, clearly, so that those listening at home can hear what you have to say, and then those up here at City Council in the back of the room can hear what you have to say. If you have comments, please introduce yourself, your city of residence. I'll open it up for citizen comments. Don't have any, okay, so we will move on to Roman numeral 4, presentations. Item A, Proclamation of Fire Prevention Week, recognizing October 8th through the 14th, 2023 as Fire Prevention Week. And I'm going to read a proclamation and invite Fire Marshal Sorrell to come up front, and I will do this copy of it. Yeah. Whereas the city of Lewiston is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all those living in and visiting our city, and whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes is a location where people are at greatest risk from fire, and whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires in the United States, and fire departments responded to more than 166,400 annually between 2016 and 2020, and whereas 2 of every 5 home fires start in the kitchen, with 31% of these fires resulting from unattended cooking. And whereas residents who have planned and practiced a home fire escape plan are more prepared and will therefore be more likely to survive a fire. And whereas working smoke alarms cut the risk of dying in reported home fires almost in half. And whereas Lewiston's first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. And whereas the 2023 Fire Prevention Week theme, quote, cooking safety starts with you, pay attention to fire prevention, unquote, effectively serves to remind us to stay alert and use caution when cooking to reduce the risk of kitchen fires. Now, therefore, I, Dan Johnson, Mayor of the City of Lewiston, Idaho, do hereby proclaim the week of October 4th to the 14th, 2023 as Fire Prevention Week, and I urge all the citizens of Lewiston to check their kitchens for fire hazards and use safe cooking practices during Fire Prevention Week 2023, and to support the many public safety activities and efforts of our community's fire and emergency services. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and seal of the City of Lewiston, Idaho, to be affixed hereto the 2nd day of October 2023. Daniel T. Johnson, Mayor, Lewiston, Idaho. Chief, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Here's your proclamation. Then I'm going to ask if you could just share 30 seconds or something. Give us your message about fire safety, please. And what you tell the kids.
Thank you again. Thank you, everybody, for the opportunity and for the proclamation. We just ask that everybody, as we typically ask, everybody make sure that you have working smoke alarms in your home. That's the number 1 thing. Number 2 thing is know how to get out of your home and know that you can safely, especially if you have little kids or elderly ones or people that may need assistance. If you have those type of folks especially, please practice some type of a plan, because I can tell you everything changes when an actual fire occurs, and having that repetition, it is your greatest benefactor if you actually need to use it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Marshal Swall, I have to ask the question. Smoke detectors. How many should we have in the home, and how often do we change the batteries? And in reality, what do you find in your inspections?
So you should have smoke alarms outside of every sleeping area, at least one on every floor, and one in every bedroom. And since we're gonna talk smoke alarms, we should also talk carbon monoxide alarms. Those are also required. They're supposed to be changed. The old concept was every 6 months. What we're doing now is we're requesting that people buy the 10-year lithium batteries so that if they get forgotten, at least we'll have a working smoke alarm. The nice thing about the 10-year lithium batteries is it also goes for the life of the smoke alarm. Smoke alarms have a life value of about 10 years. With a 10-year lithium battery, every 10 years you just pull those off and throw them away. And today you can buy those smoke alarms with combination carbon monoxide in them. Carbon monoxide is a deadly killer. I've seen 3 or 4 instances here in town where people got really sick from them, but their detectors alerted them there was a problem.
Thank you. Councilors, we will now move to Roman numeral 5, discussion items. Please note that identifying an item as an action item does not require the City Council to vote on that item. Item A is Modi Park Conservancy Support Request. This is a request for support from the City Council to proceed with accepting a land donation of approximately 19 acres from the Randall family who own property adjacent to the current Modi Park. This is an action item, and I think we have Phil Shin and Don Brigham here today to address the council. Again, please remember to introduce yourself for the record, and you're going to have to speak loudly, clearly, and maybe project your voice a little bit up towards the ceiling somewhat so those listening at home can hear what you have to say.
Okay.
Welcome. Yeah.
Philip Shin, currently from Moscow, but about 7 decades from Lewiston. I've been a part of Modi Park Conservancy, and that's the reason that I'm here today. We're seeking your support for a long-range plan for the future with news of a donation to Modi Park. Modi Park wasn't created like other city parks, like Airport Park or Harris Park or Pioneer Park or Sunset, where a parcel of land is set aside for a park. Modi Park was built piece by piece. There's actually, it started with Don Modi donating a parcel in honor of his wife in 1981. So for 42 years, Modi Park has been a plan for the future. In 1992, 30 years ago, the Conservancy came to the council and asked for their support to the concept of a citizens group assisting the city in building Modi Park. It had just sat static that entire time. The city council gave their blessing and told staff to work with the Conservancy. And for the past 30 years, we, with the city, have bolted together 8 different parcels. You know, it just didn't happen like that. The last one was only about 5 years ago that we added to Modi Park. And the benefit of that is that the title can be passed when it's convenient. So for the first 3 parcels that consist Modi Park, title was passed to the Idaho Foundation for Parks and Lands. And that was actually from 1981, the first donation, held until 2005, when we got a grant for $211,000 from the Land and Water Conservation Grant Foundation, Land and Water Conservation Fund. And we got restroom, trees, parking, irrigation, picnic shelters, with that $211,000. But the value of those 3 parcels, the Randalls and actually the 2 parcels, Randalls and the Modis, matched that federal grant for $211,000. What we're proposing, well, I should say, the Conservancy also accepted 3 parcels and purchased a parcel which is passed to the city as Modi Park. What we're proposing today is to accept the title in behalf of the city and pass it to the city at such time, 20, 30 years, when we can find a grant. And I look at the city population and think it could be 50,000 people when this park is finally passed to the city. Remember in the comprehensive plan, 1964, Charles Kremenek, Park and Recreation Director, looked at the new Reno edition and said, if we're not careful, there's not going to be a park in Reno edition. And there isn't a city park, city-owned park in Reno edition. So we're talking about the future. We're talking about planning for a future park. And I'd like to introduce Don Brigham, who's going to tell you a little bit about that future.
Thank you. Don Brigham, 414 Teresa Court, Clarkston, but a resident of the valley here since 1980, I guess. Not 7 decades, not yet. Anyway, we were approached by Kent Randall a little over a year ago. He made a special trip to come up here to the Modi Park annual meeting, and just kind of out of the blue, actually. I mean, we've been in communication, but out of the blue, he came up and talked with Phil and I, and we got the feeling that he was looking at donating this parcel of land, which is roughly 19 acres. And so we were kind of, wow, this is too good to believe. And we started talking and brainstorming, and he kind of let it know that, well, if you guys have an idea of what could happen here, or a wish, or if you even want it, let me know. And so we put our heads together and we schemed and dreamed and said, you know, what could be some potential uses? And as Phil said, Modi Park is different than the others. There's never going to be pickleball courts or frisbee golf or anything like that. It's a place where flora and fauna come first and people are the visitors. And so it's going to be kind of a wildlife refuge. And so a bulk of this 19 acres could sometime in the future very well be just where red-tailed hawks and bunnies and the deer, resident deer that are up there and stuff hang out, and probably more forested, et cetera. But we put forward several ideas. These are just placeholder ideas of things that could happen up there, just as we did back in the early 90s, dreaming for the butterfly garden and the Veterans Grove and the elements that are incorporated into the current Modi Park. And so it was really an exciting opportunity, and as conversations between Kent and his sister, which are from California, and us continued, it became clear that he was excited about this possibility as well. And so it's not really been a secret. We've talked this over, and the Modi Park Conservancy Board has passed a resolution saying we want to do this. We met with Tim and the Parks and Rec Board a month or so ago, and they adopted a similar resolution. And so that's kind of basically what we're asking today, is a support from council saying that this would be a good thing. Again, as Phil mentioned, the title would actually go to Modi Park Conservancy. It wouldn't be held by the city, but it'd be held by Modi Park until such time as we can leverage that to the benefit of both parties, using it as match for grants and stuff. So it's the same formula that we've done several times in the past, and really has been to the benefit of everybody there. So the you know, if it isn't been secret, it isn't no longer secret. It's out there that Kent and his sister are wishing to donate this land. They'd like it to be this part of the parcel, this part of the park, that would be called the Doug and Susan Randall Reserve, like a land reserve, in honor of their parents and stuff. And so I think it's a really exciting opportunity, and we really hope that we have your support. We also have Kerry here, who looks like he's taking judicious notes, but he's the attorney representing Kent Randall, and I think maybe you wish to say a couple words in this as well.
Thank you. Kent was disappointed that he could not be here today.
So for the record, introduce
I'm
yourself,
sorry.
please.
My name is Kerry Wagner. I'm an attorney. I'm the attorney for Kent Randall and his sister, the people who are interested in donating the land. I'm also a Lewiston resident, maybe only 45 years old. Phil still has me beat. But Kent just asked that I come to the meeting just to be able to express to the council that they were excited about the prospect of being able to donate their parents' land for the future growth of Modi Park and the ability to have a large green space within the city limits, as Phil said, which will probably become even more important as the city continues to grow. And like I said, mostly Kent just wanted me to know that, or wanted me to let the council know that they were supportive of this project, and they're proud to partner with Modi Park Conservancy and the city in moving forward.
Councilors, questions for any one of our guests?
Mayor,
Councilor Forsman?
just a comment. I was there at the Parks and Rec meeting when you guys talked about too, and so I was already kind of knowing ahead a little bit of what's gonna happen here. And I'm in full support. I think that it's important for our kids to also have somewhere to go that's not just a playground, but more nature that they get to watch and educational. And so I'm excited to see this come forward, and that this family's wonderful donation can bring future property that's in the middle of Lewiston, which is nice too, because you don't have to go way out to find maybe a little quiet serenity that you might wanna have. And I've taken that trail lots of times, especially with my kids, and they like looking at all the nature around, and so it's really cool, and I'm just excited for the partnership.
Councilor Towsley?
I didn't get a chance to see any maps of the park. Whereabouts,
Sorry.
can you kind of describe where this
Yeah,
piece of ground is?
I apologize. Halfway through, I go, dumb. But we decided not to show slides because that just, yeah.
Sure.
So if you've been to the Veterans Home and you turn up, whatever that is.
21st
21st,
Avenue.
yeah, 21st Avenue, and go clear to the end, the restroom and the parking lot are there. Directly south, which is basically land, there are, granted, yeah, there's a few noxious weeds, but it's mostly grassland. And so it just goes up between the current park and Guardian Homes and the church there, et cetera. So climbs all the way up, quite a topographic
Got
change.
it.
But it's basically anything that's not developed and not green as part of the park.
Thank you.
Thanks for asking.
Yeah.
Councilors, I think the request is I think more than anything, are looking to gather our support, maybe just a verbal confirmation. We're not voting on anything official like a resolution or
Sure.
ordinance, but just give them some comfort.
Mayor? Oh. Sorry. Mayor. Jennifer Tingano, Assistant City Attorney. In the past, the city has passed a resolution expressing its support of a proposed future donation in the event it became appropriate. I don't know if the city council would like to do that again. At this time, we don't have such a resolution proposed or anything of that nature, but if the city council were interested in doing so, we could definitely get one prepared and proposed to be presented to city council at a regular city council meeting. Thank you.
Better stay close, you don't know. Just a second.
Jennifer,
We had Councilor Schroeder first here.
oh, sorry.
Oh, no, no.
Okay.
Please.
We'd be happy to share what Parks and Rec adopted, and you could revise or reword that, okay? That would be a starting point.
And a little bit, the reason we'd like to have a letter of support is to take, or a resolution, of whatever form it takes, is to collect those with the other two that we have and take it to the county commissioners so we can get a tax exempt status. We're prepared to pay the tax, but we'd rather not. So that would just help with the Board of Equalization. Thanks.
Councilors, this is an action item. A motion to prepare a resolution for consideration would be in order. Councilor Schroeder?
I move that we prepare a resolution. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get all your words.
Just in support of the
In
Moonlight Park
support of the,
Conservancy.
the Moonlight Park Conservancy.
Second. It's been moved by Councilor Schroeder, second by Councilor Kleberg, to approve preparation of resolution to support, show our support, City Council to the family, but to the Moonlight Park Conservancy, accepting land donation of approximately 19 acres from the Randall family, who own the property adjacent to the current Moonlight Park. Is there discussion? Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, thank you for that vote. I appreciate that. We all appreciate that. We also, the board is looking for an infusion of new members. So as you're out visiting with your constituents and neighbors and friends, we'd love to have board members. They, don't have to be out there raking or doing it. We'd like just ideas. We want to move strongly into more of an educational component in the future, having kids build bat houses, that sort of stuff. So any support, any new blood would really be great for our board. So appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Don. Councilors, next up, we'll move to agenda item 5B, a request for a no-build easement. Considering whether to review a request for a no-build easement from K&G Construction LLC on city property. This is an action item, and for background information, councilors, you should have seen, if you didn't see, we received a letter September 18th, 2023 from Clever Fox Architecture. I'm having a hard time speaking today. Michelle Rademacher, who's here with us today, requesting the city of Lewiston for a 10-foot, 0-inch wide no-build easement along property line between city parking lot and 625 D Street. And what this does basically is it'll allow the builder next door, K&G, some discretion, or at least some allowances in the construction of their new project there, and what they are required to build or not build, or what they're required to put on their office or not put on their office. So what this would do is create an easement adjacent to the property, 10 feet wide, 10 feet long, 10 feet wide. No-build easement on the city parking lot. The distance from the 10-foot no-build easement line to the exterior wall of the office building would be from 11 feet 5 inches at the southwest building corner to 22 feet 6 inches at the northwest building corner. With this distance allowance, with no allowed construction in the easement, the exterior wall of the proposed office addition would not be required to be fire rated. The windows would not be required to be fire rated, and allowable window opening area would be unlimited. So with that, I'm going to ask if our Assistant City Attorney Jennifer Tangano would address the council first about whether or not this is even something you can consider, and or if you do, what you need to also be thinking about. So Jennifer, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I'm Jennifer Tangano, Assistant City Attorney for the City of Lewiston. And this particular request is requesting the city provide an easement on its city-owned property where the D Street parking lot is at. The reason why we're presenting it to you is because it's a city council decision about whether or not to encumber city property for the benefit of this requester. The problems that it potentially causes is then the city council will have to justify and state what the public purpose for encumbering the property would be. Just like all other city assets and city property, the city is limited to using its property for the benefit of the public. And this particular request is from a private corporation, a private individual. And so in doing the easement itself, there would have to be some kind of public purpose for doing so. If the city is not able to find a public purpose to grant the easement, then the recommendation for me would probably be to consider not doing it for that reason. The city has constitutional limitations on what it can do. That public purpose doctrine is one of those limitations.
That's the tough part about your job. Council, questions for Jennifer before we maybe hear from the applicant? Councilor Spickelmeyer.
Thank you, Mayor. So Jennifer, I was looking at this map that was provided, and it looks like that area is currently parking, correct? It looks like there's cars parked in it.
My understanding, Counselor, is that it's actually the landscaping in front, or I guess in front of where the parking is at. The area that will be subject to this easement, I don't think it actually goes into where the parking spaces is, but if it does, it would just go into some of that front end portion. My understanding is even then, the area that they would need is actually smaller than 10 feet based on the way the measurements all work out. That's not my particular area, but it should not cause any problems as far as parking in that area.
So it doesn't change the current status of that area?
No, it does not. And everything that's currently existing would remain in place.
Counselor Forsman?
What, and maybe I'm trying to visualize this, if something happened to someone or a citizen and got injured, is there any liability on the city since it's still technically gonna be our property?
The city would likely maintain all of its current liabilities for the property. The easement would be limited to the city agreeing not to build anything in that particular area or cause for some reason that no build requirement to be deficient in some way. So we wouldn't be able to build in that area or do anything different than what it is that would affect the ability for the fire rating for those materials. But it would still be an encumbrance on city property, so that if the city were to sell the property in the future, they decided they wanted to sell it to a business that wanted to run parking lots. That easement would transfer with the property, and if whoever owned it subsequent to the city wanted to develop or change around that parking lot, they would not be able to because of the fact that that easement is on there.
Thank you, Jennifer. Joe, would you like to address the council at all, or in more detail, or? Okay.
I can. I'm Kevin Messick. I live in Foothill Drive in Lewiston. We've finally have bought the property there. We're one to add on. We're trying to grow our business. The main reason we're looking for that 10-foot easement is so that we don't have to fire rate our windows. If we have to fire rate our windows, we're gonna be limited to windows. We can't have operable windows. It'll all be sealed windows because of the cost. It's $3,600 per window to have an operable window that's fire rated. We're still fire rating the walls. We're still doing the basic, but we want to just trying to get away from that window cost and also, like I said, to have operable windows. It's not that you can't use that property. The thing is that 10-foot is only that you cannot build in that easement. You can build up to 10 foot. You can build right up to that side. If someone were to buy that property, they still can build. They just have a 10-foot between our building and their building. That's all we're looking for.
Councilors, any comments or questions? Councilor Lidke?
I'm just wondering if there's somebody from fire that can speak to, are there any variances that would allow a different window choice that would?
Councilor, I hate to do it, but you're gonna have to speak up or I'm gonna get the emails. They can't hear us.
I was wondering if somebody from fire could address if there's any variances that haven't been looked at as far as windows so that we're not locked into this.
So the fire separation requirement is actually driven in new construction, by the building code. So this 10-foot variance, this 10-foot easement, what it provides is for Kevin to be able to build, if he were to have a fire can come out without impacting the adjacent property. The other thing that I see here is when someone else builds, they won't be stuck with the fire rated assembly issue, as Kevin's probably faced with today. There's plenty of other options out there. I don't know, I think Kevin's been working with the building official. I don't know what options he's proposing at this point, but this is a pretty common occurrence when you're up against a property line. I believe the building code setback is 5 foot from either a physical property line or an imaginary property line between properties. So 10 foot actually meets code per the building code for two buildings to be separated. This just ensures that someone else won't encroach on him in the future.
Councilor Townsley?
Thank you. Do you see any red flags from your perspective?
No, like I said, this is a pretty common way to deal with a situation like this. This is actually, you were asking about alternatives. This is actually one of those alternatives.
We met with John Smith and we've talked, we've had a couple DRC meetings and we've been trying to find a way to do this so we can have operating windows. That is the one plus for anybody else that builds. They can build up to that 10-foot easement and they can do the same ratings that we're doing, which will be less cost to them and less impact. When you put two buildings up next to each other, as we know, we have to have a 1 hour or 2 hour, it depends on the build and how close they are, if it's apartments, if it's what. We're adding on to our office, we've outgrown it, and we're just trying to, and also make a little nicer building down there.
Thank you.
Counselor Forsman?
What was I'm trying to recall what, Tingo said about if we sold it, hindrance to who would buy it, sorry, can we? That's the only red flag I see, which might not actually be as big a red flag as, maybe I'm putting in my head.
So, again, Jennifer Tangano, Assistant City Attorney. Counselor Forsman, if I'm understanding your question correctly, you're asking about what the encumbrance would be. So if the city were to grant this easement, it would likely be in perpetuity, so for as long as it's needed. And then if the city were to ever sell the property, that easement would transfer with the sale, so any future purchasers of the parking lot property would still have that encumbrance, or that parking lot is the burdened property, while the neighboring property benefits from that easement. As I mentioned, again, that isn't as much of the concern as far as subsequent purchasers. It's the fact that it's a request from a private property to encumber, a private party to encumber public property for their benefit. We would just have to be able to articulate a standard as far as the public purpose for granting that easement. And that public purpose would likely be transferable to other properties who may request a similar easement on their property against city property as well.
Counselor Forsman?
So it was mentioned that this is kind of a common way of going about things, so are we aware of other incidences in the city that we've already done this for businesses to be able to have this type of?
In my prior discussions with the building official, John Smith, it's typically a recommendation that he makes between private parties. He doesn't typically make the recommendation between city property and private parties.
Counselor Towesley?
Thank you. So are we setting a precedent as far as what we are doing if we choose to accept this?
You would be, yes.
And would this invite others in other situations to possibly request the same, and would we have to grant them, or can it be a case-by-case basis?
As far as whether or not it would be opening the door for other requests, yes, it would. As far as whether or not it would be something that we would likely have to look at or grant, you can look at it on a case-by-case basis, but you are likely constrained to granting it if it's the same in nature or if it's the same public purpose reasoning that someone provides. It may not be exactly the same, but if the circumstances are similar enough, then the city would be, I don't want to say required, but more likely than not needing to grant it.
Sure.
For equal protection purposes.
Thank you.
Counselor Speckelmeyer?
Thank you, Mayor. So in this, looks like you're considering whether to review it. If we did approve it today or moved on, it still would have to pass coming up with the public benefit or whatever you mentioned, correct?
That is correct.
Counselor Schroeder?
So if I understand, the 10-foot, if the city property, somebody took it over, it would be to their benefit to be able to build closer because that 10-foot is already been taken care of, or?
I do not know the answer to that.
They wouldn't build close, they'd be building up to that 10-foot easement.
So the
They could
10-foot
bid right up to the 10-foot and they'd have the same fire rating, which is less. They could have opening windows, they could have more of exactly what we're looking for.
Okay, so without that
It
there,
would
they,
benefit them also, because if they build up against me, then they're gonna be having to put in the same fire ratings, the same expense.
so would that be, not that I'm promoting this, but would that be considered enough of a public purpose?
I don't know if it would be because of the fact that all of that 10 feet is on that property already. So a future developer would still have the option of not building within 10 feet of the property line anyways. So it's not an additional benefit for that parcel. The benefit will solely go to the neighboring parcel.
Counselor Litke?
So, do we have any public reasonings that have been brought up because right now I'm not hearing any.
There is the possibility, one idea, Public Works is not gonna be a fan. The way that parking lots are treated, there are, in essences, rights of way in those. Right now, the public parking lots are not treated as rights of way, but if for some reason there were rights of way in there, my understanding is that there would be no need for the easement. However, that doesn't account for any future changes in the property. And the city does not currently treat its public parking lots as rights of way. And it opens the door for a whole lot of different issues if it were to be a right of way.
Counselor Towsley?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to direct staff to further review this to see if they can come up with a public purpose that this body can stomach and can vote in favor of this. I'm not necessarily opposed. Precedent always gets my attention, and the other ideas of future issues that are related or have bearing based on this particular decision we make, I certainly would like to see other possible options for that. That was a long thinking.
Sorry, do I have to wait for a second though?
You got it.
Well, that wasn't a motion, but,
Yeah, I made a motion to direct staff.
could you restate the motion, please?
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to investigate other possible public purpose reasoning statements to allow for this to move forward. Is that clear? Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right, it's been moved by Counselor Towsley, second by Counselor Spickmeyer, basically requesting a report from staff on no-build easement and for your future consideration. Now, Counselor, I would like to ask you if you could amend your motion by giving us a time certain that you would like to get this back so that we can keep moving forward.
I would say I'm curious, can I ask a question? I'm curious how quickly you are feeling the need to move on this.
Well, the windows are the primary issues that I'm dealing with, and we're working on getting our permit submitted. And we'd like to submit it with this information, but if we can't, then we may have to amend our permit going forward. So right now, we've got a foundation-only permit, and we're starting our foundation right now.
Okay. If we say the first regular meeting in November, is that too late for you?
It would work.
I'm trying to work with you.
No, I understand. No, I think that would be fine. I mean, we're gonna submit the way we are with the fire-rated windows in case we cannot do this.
Okay.
But we're trying, like I said, primarily, we're just trying to get to where we can have operating windows that aren't, I mean, we're gonna have to.
I understand.
And we can't have as many windows. It just limits our office spaces.
So the first regular meeting of November. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
That would be November 13th.
Give clarification.
Counselor, are you okay with that amended motion? Okay. It's been moved by Counselor Towsley, second by Counselor Spickmeyer, to have staff prepare a report on whether or not to grant no-build easement from K&G Construction. LLC on city property, and report back to you on Monday, November 13th. Further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor?
I was just gonna make a comment, but that's okay.
Thank you, comment, Counselor.
I was just gonna echo kind of what Councilor Towsley said, just that we've, even just this last meeting, had a kind of where we tie our hands when we accept certain builds, and so just making sure that we're being vigilant, not that we don't want to make sure that we're helping businesses grow and being able to work around things, but also just making sure for future development that we're not tying our hands. And so I think that's why it's just really important that we investigate and take time into this, so.
Thank you, Counselor. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. And I'll work with you and staff to come up with something there. Okay, Council, next item is Normal Hill Cemetery presentation, review and discussion of the finance and operations of Normal Hill Cemetery. This is an action item, and I will lead this discussion. Councilors, as you know, at prior meetings, we've been looking at deferred maintenance and surplus properties across the city and ways of trying to improve how we do business. And one of the suggestions, at least that I considered, or when I was interested in, was looking at the land adjacent to Southway Avenue there in Lewiston, and the possibility of selling part of those grounds off for a couple of reasons. One of them is to provide opportunity, economic development opportunities in this part of our town. And secondly, to potentially generate some revenues that could be put into the cemetery operations, in particular, the Perpetual Care Fund, to help fund operations long into the future. And so what I have done, and I think you have seen at least an electronic copy of this, is the Normal Hill Cemetery Master Plan. So you have access to that. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna go through this quickly and highlight a couple of my findings in this, and then open this up for discussion. So I appreciate your patience as I work through this. First of all, if we look at the inside of it, the executive summary, it says the purpose of this plan is to guide the cemetery toward a model of long-term sustainability and ensure that the city of Lewiston will have the resources required to effectively meet future interment and service needs of the community. And along with that is the 6.3 acres of undeveloped cemetery land, which is the subject of our discussion here, and what to do with that. In this plan, there were several areas that were covered: facility assessment, recommendations, operations and government, product and services, financial plan, and marketing strategies. And some conceptual plan recommendations. As I went through this plan, this Normal Hill Cemetery Master Plan, and reviewed some of the recommendations, it appears to me that there are many recommendations within this master plan that have not been implemented and have not moved the cemetery toward long-term sustainability as drafted in this master plan. So I think that goes hand in hand with taking a look at these lands along Southway Avenue and whether or not there's an opportunity there. If we take a look at these assumptions, and if we don't follow them, then we have to ask our questions about the plan and whether or not we're going to achieve the long-term sustainability and achieve other goals that are outlined in here, especially without any supporting documentation. And so let me just go through some of this real quick, and if you have a copy or if you're following along, I can give you a page number as I go through this. On page 10, talks about, as an example, if Normal Hill Cemetery would offer higher density interments for family members, for example, 2 caskets and 2 urns interred with their existing casket lot, and 2 to 6 sets of cremated remains interred at each cremation lot, then the projected life of Normal Hill's existing cemetery inventory could potentially double for casket lots. So this is important with understanding this plans, because it's not just this bare ground that we're talking about and trying to increase opportunities. There's other things that maybe could be done on the rest of the cemetery that would also extend the life of the cemetery and contribute either towards achieving these goals or not achieving these goals. That is an infill strategy for the developed part of the cemetery. And on page 11 here, it talks about potential interment capacity and assuming that the entire 6.3 acres of the expansion lands are maintained for cemetery use, 500 burial lots per acre, with all undeveloped space being developed as adult casket lot cemetery. It says it compares the estimated total lot capacity to the future burial demand and shows the possibility of more than 150 years of casket lot inventory at Norman Hill Cemetery. So we're talking a long time into the future possibility on how this land could be developed. But again, there's a lot of assumptions that are made on this, whether we go to cremations, whether we do fill, or if we developed this land to the south side. Some of the key findings: supply analysis, assume that Norman Hill Cemetery does not infill in its existing development space, and I think that, again, is a possibility to extend the life of the current cemetery that we have. There's some recommendations here, needs analysis about developing all 6.3 acres and how that might meet the city's needs. The issue of whether these lands should be sold or retained, that's the entire 6.3 acres south of the current developed portion of the cemetery, says here is a key recommendation in this cemetery master plan. And it appears to me when I read it that the direction was kind of written in that direction to preserve these lands, but I think there's some assumptions that we can check and ask and see if it makes sense to consider other options for some of these lands. Again, chapter 3, physical site review, talks about the opportunity to densify the burial space, eliminate the impression of sprawl.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, page number.
Page 15.
I'm sorry, thank you.
There are other references here to updating or not updating the code. Challenges that may be there in the site. For example, on the bottom of page 15, it talks about the cold fill used in expansion lands, especially along the eastern edge of the bordering 7th Street. It may have rougher fill, including large concrete, and then could present challenges to traditional internment. So it isn't, we're not going out there and just digging necessarily in, black soil. There's other challenges out there. One of the positives that it talks about in here is governance of the cemetery, and it talks about our commission. It says that really it is less common for a municipality to have an independent oversight group guiding cemetery policy like ours. So that's a plus. That's a good thing for us. But I would say along with that comes a responsibility too to provide some feedback to us as a council in understanding. On page 21, and I'm going to get into some of these recommendations now. This is 2015, December of 2015. This plan is dated. It says, for example, there's one skill set that could be added to the commission to enhance the overall effectiveness of the group's oversight. That would be an expert in financial and business management, particularly in the areas of cemetery partnership, sales, and promotion. And these are important recommendations because these are going to guide some of the decisions, some of the investment decisions we make at that park. And again, if we don't make those early on, as the plan assumes, it's going to be hard to realize those benefits 75 and 150 years down the road. And so we'll get to some of that. Page 31 talks about cemetery pricing reviews. At the time of this plan, 2015, it says the city last increased cemetery rates in 2006. At the bottom of that same page, it says a best practice for North American cemeteries is to increase fees annually, at minimum by the rate of inflation. And it says here, City Council on bottom of page or top of page 32, City Council will need to update the city code to allow for automatic annual increases should it choose to follow this industry practice. And it's my understanding that we don't do that today. And so what I'm trying to point out is when we look at some of the assumptions on the life of the cemetery and how we're going to develop this and what kind of returns we expect, if we don't implement some of these recommendations early on, then it's hard to say that we're going to realize the benefits at the end of the plan. I mean, it's simple math. On page 33, 5.4 recommendations, products and services. For example, Again, it says here, increase prices annually at minimum by the rate of inflation. It says define resident in the cemetery code. The purpose for that is to maybe have separate fees for residents and non-residents. And you can argue that back and forth. There might be good reasons to have or not have that. But it's also clear too that the residents or the people who live in the city of Lewiston here are the ones who are paying the property taxes on this. And they don't get a break on these. So I think those are fair. On the bottom of page 33, it talks about increasing the resident rates for cremation, adult opening, and other things. And that, again, this was December 2015. It's my understanding that we've not achieved this in a lot of our rates. Bottom of page 42, recommendations for a financial plan. Again, I'm not trying to look for things to hit the commission up on, but rather to highlight maybe the opportunity we have to sell the land and to do other things at the cemetery. It says here, recommendations on the financial plan to achieve self-sustainable operations, the city should, and it gives several recommendations along the way there. For example, reasonable annual price increases. I think we've raised them 3 times since 2015, but not at the rate of inflation. The problem is that as things become more and more expensive, if we don't follow inflation, then somebody else has to pay for that. And, you know, it could be argued that that's where property taxes are kicking in. If we want to talk about keeping property taxes lower or to extend our budgets out, then we should, in my opinion, we should be looking at these annual increases, and that's what's recommended here. Bottom of page 42, monitor the progress of revenues, profit loss, and community response to ensure the cemetery plan is evolving as expected. Revisit the cemetery financial plan every 5 years to respond to changing market conditions. So this might be an opportunity for the council to ask the cemetery commission, say, hey, we'd like to see a 5-year review of the plan. Are we on target or not? And what kind of opportunities may exist out there for us to meet these future needs? There's marketing strategies. I don't want to get into that. I do want to point out, you know, just to show you briefly, and then we'll have our discussion here shortly, but this is the undeveloped portion of the cemetery that we're talking about. And what I'm interested in looking at is the bottom 100 feet or so of just this little section right here to allow for some other economic development opportunities. And one of the criticisms, or at least one of the recommendations or comments I got back, is that we would lose some space in the future, but there's a road that goes right through the middle of that. So if we were to sell some of these lands off, we're not gonna have graves in there anyway. And instead of having a road here, you can put a road there. You still have the frontage that you need and the walking paths in there. So maybe with just some minor changes to it or a different scenario, it might be workable. And then if we look at again, the number of interments, depending on if it's cremation or typical burial or whatever, we may end up with the same number of burials in that. Bottom of page 59, concept design development budget recommendations and return on investment, 8.2. There's some assumptions that are made about this in terms of the management of the cemetery. I do want to point out that it says that projected returns are not discounted for the time value of money. So when you start looking at the numbers, you have to remember that we're talking cemetery sales maybe 50 years in the future versus selling the land today. You sell the land today and you invest that, plus you collect tax revenues on that land. Your returns are going to be much greater than what's reported in here because it doesn't account for the time value of money. That's right in the report. That's not me making it up. Page 60, 61 gives those values. Projected phases talks about this will allow the city to limit the capital outlay and to refine next phases of development. These prices do not include the cost of development. It's not a free lunch. You can't just go out there and start putting in some gravesite. The land needs a lot of work to bring it up to where it would even, I think, be desirable to be there. And then it says on page 62, it says Norman Hill Cemetery will achieve far greater returns both in revenue and in meeting the burial needs of the community in the long term by developing the cemetery's expansion lands rather than selling them. So that's a statement they made, but I'm gonna challenge that statement today because I'm not sure that it's supported by the plan, especially when you look at the time value of money, but also if we ask ourselves, and I've done this in a couple of areas, I've talked with staff and asked them how we're doing in achieving some of these recommendations, and we're not hitting them all right now. And so I think it's fair to come back to ask the commission to take a look at this plan, give us an update and see if we're achieving it or not. And then find out whether or not other design scenarios are achievable, and if so, what that might mean. And again, you know, for me, the way that I'm trying to look at some opportunities for development in the city and spread that development around the city, not just in one part of the town. It's something that is of interest to me, and I think something that may be of value for the council to discuss. I do want to, and then I have some notes from cemetery staff. They did a great job. We have our rates here. I do want to say that if you go to our city website today, unfortunately, we cannot find the minutes for the cemetery commission minutes. They're not there, just one set. So the public, wanted to access those. I apologize that they're not there. We need to do a better job and get those out for the public. I don't know why they're not there, but they're not on the website. And so the one set that was there is May 24th, 2023. And the commission at the time, it was brought to their attention that the city was looking at deferred maintenance and other issues and what should happen. At that time in May, it says here in the minutes, the commission had a discussion regarding the vacant 6 acres on the south side of the cemetery, and that the recommendation from the 2015 master plan was the best long-term investment of the land as cemetery property, not to sell it off for commercial development. So I guess I would challenge that and ask the council to consider asking the commission to do a review, to update some of the recommendations that are in there to see if we're achieving our fullest potential for that site. And with that, councilors, I would invite any questions or comments that you may have. Councilor Forsman?
Would you say, so it was 2014, if my understanding is the last time this was revamped or looked at? This was the last time.
December 15.
Of 2015?
Yeah.
And so maybe even, if I'm understanding what you're saying, is maybe even going through it and basically updating it to today so that it would reflect today's information instead of 2015's information.
Councilor, thank you for that question. Yeah, in fact, and I'll be honest, when I first thought about this piece of ground and whether or not we could sell that, my thought was just, let's take a look at surplusing this land. I really didn't think much more than that. But as I have reviewed this plan very carefully and come to find out that there are a lot of recommendations in there that we're not following through on as a city. And that's going to impact the performance of the plan if we don't do those things. It's just the way it is. It's neither good or bad. It's factual. And so as I did that and I start looking at the development, the phase, where there's concern about selling this off, there's a road that goes through there. I said, well, okay, it goes up to the other part of the cemetery. If we didn't build that road, sold it off and had the road come across, you're actually going to pick up some spots too. I don't know what the net gain or loss is, but it's just another way to manage that piece of property. And by putting some development in there, commercial, professional development, offices type thing, it also is going to provide that buffer that you need in that cemetery, because there's, they design a buffer for that. So you get that and, put in your vegetative buffer and stuff like that. There may not be much of a net difference in terms of total grave sites there. But again, as the cemetery, some of the things they're challenged to do is to look at these other cremations. What's the pattern? Are people going this way or that way? How much of the market are we capturing here in Lewiston? Should we be charging rates that are adjusted annually for inflation? That's what the recommendation says, but we're not doing that. And every time we don't do that, then it comes back to the council. Pressure is put on council to fund cemetery operations. And there's only a couple of ways to do that, either through perpetual care fund when we transfer money over into operations, and or to raise taxes. That's the only two places we pay for that right now. What we're very fortunate about right now as a city is that we have the red shirts that help us quite a bit. That keeps our costs down. If we ever lost the ability to have red shirts in the cemetery, I'll probably come back to you and ask you for 2 or 3 positions. There's just no other way to do it. So,
Sorry, you mentioned the red shirts, and I know in here it said too that we're not always, we don't always have the red shirts that, because if they got pulled away for fire or something and like that, then and I don't know if that's today's conditions, but then we are low on staff due to that. So is that, even with that, might maybe needing warranted having more staff in order to maintain the cemetery? It sounds like from what I was reading that they're already having a hard time maintaining it as is, because of the red shirts are not always there and available.
yeah, I don't want to be critical, but we operated on a skeleton crew today, you know.
Right.
And so, you know, we're gonna have retirements, things like that are gonna come into play over the years, and we're gonna have to look at opportunities on how we deliver these services, you know. And I think there's some assumptions made in here that we might want to check those assumptions again today to see, A, are we on track? B, are we attaining sustainability? Is there some other things we can do to deliver services differently in the future, partner with others, or all of these things, but it's all in there. But staffing is, I think, a concern that has been brought up previously. Councilor Schroeder?
So you're asking us to make a request to staff to approach the commission to have them provide us information as to what they are doing or not doing as far as they're required in the master plan? Is that your request?
Correct. I think it would be beneficial for the council, but beneficial for the citizens if we were to at least get the 5-year update to the plan, which is in here. I haven't seen it if it's out there, but it should be able to update us on some of the assumptions, financial assumptions that we made in here. And again, if we're below market, if we've not increased our rates as was recommended in here, then on the back end, those numbers are probably not much use to us because we don't have the income to begin. How can we have the outcome? It
And
just,
we should have the other every 5-year updates.
and so that would be my hope, is that the council would be interested in looking at that, because I think it's gonna help us, but, you know, selfishly, from my standpoint, I wanna look at other opportunities. And as they explore these different phases, if there's another way to lay that out on the ground, we may find out that, I think we'll probably lose a few net, but we have a lot more options today than we did years ago. Not everybody's gonna be in a casket, and it's not gonna be double caskets and, you know, 4 remains on top. That's not possible, probably in a lot of cases. Councilor Speckelmeyer?
Thanks, Jim, you had your hand up a little bit ago?
All the way.
Okay. Being on the commission, and I agree, it needs to be updated, but to me, assigning it to the commission with the 3 members we have, it's a huge undertaking. We have our chairs here, Shirley Phillips, but I'm sure we'd be definitely willing to look at it, but I mean, that's a big undertaking to go through this whole thing, you know, the 3 people and myself, unless we assigned it all to Director Barker. But that was for you, Tim.
Councilor Cleveland?
Well, I was gonna say, I remember when the study came out, and, you know, we had open houses and presented it to people, and well-attended, you know, cookies and lemonade and all that. But I don't know that we've actually, like you said, followed up on a lot of the items that are discussed in there, like bringing in a good-sized irrigation line and main across to the new area. If you don't have water, you don't have trees, you're not gonna have much of a graveyard.
Really green now,
So
it's beautiful.
it does cost money, and I think, but to be honest with you, just looking at it over the years, I'm not gonna lay it all on the cemetery commissioner or on Director Barker. It's just limited tax dollars, where are they gonna go? We're gonna fix potholes, we're gonna put an irrigation system in to irrigate graves.
Well, I think you raised some good concerns, and again, it's not to find fault with anyone, but if we're not keeping up at least with the pace of inflation, and that's in here, these are not my words,
I agree.
how can we make plans to build and upgrade? I mean, if we run out of spots in the old cemetery, you can't just show up next year and say, we're gonna start putting folks over here because the land is not developed, it's not gonna happen. And, you know, this is a deferred maintenance type thing. We are probably behind the 8 ball on this one. We got a lot of work to do yet. And so there are other ways maybe to, I think, to look at how we finance these, including considering something like that with them. If we put those monies from the sale of those properties into the perpetual care fund, that's gonna generate a lot more interest. That interest gets transferred over to operations every year, and it's gonna reduce dependence on property taxes. I'm convinced of that. I think it's pretty easy. It's just getting used to that idea and talking about it. I'm not talking about selling the whole 6.2 acres.
No, I think that'd be foolish.
Mayor.
Councilor Schroeder, I think.
I'm a proponent of following master plan, so if behind in the master plan, then I think we need to do something to bring something, at least a 5-year, and then start making sure that that's done every 5 years. So I'm a proponent of doing that, and I also do not want to sell off all of that 6 acres. I definitely think that we need to maintain that. We heard today at, where was it? I guess it was maybe, it was in Vision Lewiston 2024 that the other cemetery up in the Orchards has lots of acres that'll, for 200 years, but I mean, Normal Hill is a special cemetery. There's family plots that go back 5 generations for me. So it's a kind of a sacred ground, and we want to keep it so that it can continue going. So I really do not want to sell off all that land. And I want it to be visible. I think a cemetery should be visible from the community. So anyway, if you want me to make a motion that we have direct staff to do that?
Sure, can we take a couple of comments here?
Oh, of course.
I didn't want to cut somebody off here. Councilor Forsman?
I just had a question. What's the bylaws for the committee? I don't remember how many members is the max.
I think we're short 2.
Okay. So it's not a matter of not having enough spots open, but not getting those spots filled. Am I understanding? Okay. That makes it kind of hard. I was just thinking if you could get more staff, then maybe, obviously, then you would have more hands in the pot, but it makes it hard if you're not getting volunteers, so.
Well, and one of them, I think one of the past members had a little bit more financial business background, as I understand it, who's no longer there. And, you know, and that's part of the recommendation is to have somebody on there like that so they can take a look at these decisions and try to help move that along. And I know the commission's trying to do that, and staff is not gonna do that. I don't think our finance director, she'll look at things from a different angle. She's not trying to find the right balance for the number of cremations, the number of casket burials and things like that. That's not her job, you know, to do that. But Councilor Schroeder also, I think, hits on another, one of the recommendations in here, and that is about, you know, the history, the uniqueness of this area, but also, you know, it's a park setting. There are a lot of other values that these cemeteries offer besides burying people, and there's a lot of work that we can do. They talk about it in here, and so it's a challenge to, we gotta do that, but you gotta fund them too. And so the plan has to be, you know, in good shape to do that, so. Councilor Lickey?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go a little bit against Councilor Spickelmeyer and say that I think that this could be reviewed and updated in a couple meetings, because I sat down and had my computer open and went to the website and found what things were definitely not dealt with. I did a search for definition of non-resident in city code. It's not there. I think that the answers to the assumptions will help guide us in our decision-making, and I don't think that a lot of time would be needed. And just to, I guess, not throw it out, but Director Barker has said that this has been discussed regularly, the issues within this. So I feel like the commission is well-versed in the ability to give us the information we need. But I would also be a big proponent of defining that non-resident in city code, because I think it comes up in more than one conversation about how we tend to be the hub of this community, which includes non-residents, and our taxpayers are feeling the weight of covering the cost for everyone. So I would like to see that identified in code and addressed, and I would like to see that we're not continually increasing our pull from taxpayers, but addressing the fees. We just had a conversation about the golf course, and while I think that there's maybe some more history with this, the benefit is still to the people that pay for the service over the community as a whole, when we look at the costs. So when we look at if people choose to golf, they're going to pay a fair market price. I think we need to catch this up as well. So I'm all for seeing what we need to do and moving forward, because a master plan doesn't do much in 8 years with no update and really no decisions have been made to address any of these things that I could find. So I'm all for an update and in a timely manner as well.
Councilor, yes.
Oh, sorry, someone else. Oh, okay. I too, we talked about, like, in our public works meeting about having master plans being a living document. And so to me, it seems even that, I don't know what way this would look, but having it every year that this would get looked at so we don't get so far behind. And to ensure that we're staying on task, things are getting done, are we still within the market value, have things changed, do we need to adjust things, so that maybe you don't have to take it in such a big chunk. But once we've gotten caught up, then once a year we look over this to make sure that this master plan is indeed a living document and not just stagnant to what maybe the past looked like, and not really looking at what today's time looks like.
And if I could just add one.
Councilor Lidkey?
And one more thing, this is all part of our strategic plan. And I know that this has been a conversation, we've finalized that plan. These should be regular updates in real time, addressing why we're not, as a council or city, making moves. And if we're not gonna make a move in what is part of the plan, we need to have a new plan. So I think this is good conversation to look at fish or cut bait.
And I think too, Council, that's why we have our commissions, they do important work for us. And so it's something like this particular master plan, it's something that the commission could review at their meetings periodically. So they don't have to do the whole plan, but if they said, we're gonna take chapter 4 and talk about these 5 recommendations, are we achieving them or not? And talk about what we need to do to get to them, or if they don't apply anymore, if they say, well, it's not a good fit, bring them back to the council or give them to the council liaison so that they can say, well, we've got some ideas here we want to take a look at. I mean, that's kind of the purpose of having it there, so that we can get that information back. So, Councilor Schroeder?
Oh, you're ready for the motion? Okay, I went to sleep. No, I didn't. See if I can get it right now. I'd like to direct, not staff, but the commission, is that correct? Not to direct staff, but to direct the cemetery
The
commission.
motion to have the cemetery commission to, review and update the.
Okay, I'd like to make a
Do a
motion
presentation to
for the cemetery commission to show us some updates, preferably 5 years, but at least a couple of years going back, whatever they can get done and get to us so that we can review and see what is going on and have a clear picture of this.
For date, you want to establish?
Took up
Like
the first
January.
November, huh?
Yeah, but that means they'd have one meeting between now and.
So when would, how often do you meet?
Right now, every 2 months.
That's what I was thinking, you were bi-monthly. Oh. I'd have to have an emergency meeting.
January.
Could we do January then, by January? Does that make sense to you, Aaron?
To see the status.
this.
Give them time. Let's see how you can do, shoot for January, and if it's not gonna work, then that's. So, January.
You've got some other work to do between now and January, but we'll leave that aside. Okay. So the motion by Councillor Schroeder, second by Councillor Forsman, is to ask the Cemetery Commission to review and update the Norman Hill Cemetery master plan, at least review and update the recommendations in the master plan. Some of them may not apply anymore. You could say we don't recommend we do that anymore, but at least provide that feedback and validate some of the numbers and everything, and then we can have a discussion on that. So is there further discussion?
Sorry,
Counselor?
just a question. Can we change that so they don't have to meet so less and maybe more once a month?
That's up to them, I think.
Okay.
I think the commissions.
Can decide that. Throwing that out there. You guys do what you wanna do, but might help to meet more than once a month, or bi-monthly. All right, go ahead, Mary.
Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you to our volunteers for serving. It's a lot easier to say go do it than us not have to do it, but I will commit to spend as much time as you need, Director Barker and others on the commission, to help you in that and assist. If you want my 2 cents, if not, you can tell me to leave and I will, but it's hard, trying to have these meetings, but it's important work that we get that, so thank you. Okay, councilors, discussion item 5D, personnel policy, review and discussion of the City of Lewiston's personnel policy. This is an action item. Councilor Lidkey.
I'll try not to take up too much time. I just happened to review the city's personnel manual when reviewing my own agency as well as state agencies, and found that, this is our document. This isn't city policy written by staff. This is really directed by us, even though obviously they present it, bring their expertise. But I think as we move into the future of workforces in general, leadership and clarity is a huge thing. And so some of the things that I just kind of went through was that there were some significant changes to admin policy. There's 3 that you can currently get from the city's website or in our drive, but there's a new travel policy, a work schedule policy, fiscal spending policy that I think we need to review and decide if that's something that we want in this document as our own, so that we're holding ourselves and others accountable to truly following a process beyond just a document that can be subjective and also permissive. And so I have been doing this after hours, so my document that I wrote all over what I was hoping to send out, but there's just some things that I think we need to look at. OSHA has some different opinions on workplace safety, violence in the workplace. They have some new opinions out on whether or not an organization should look at violence prevention. There's not a section of that specific to that, even though violence in the workplace is addressed. Just updates that, as we depend on staff to bring those to us to kind of build our expertise on helping guide that document. I will say that there were some concerning we may do this instead of we shall. For instance, on page page 9 of this document and 123 of your total document is our code of conduct. Some of the things that we've had addressed both within our state association of issues that have come up from staff is a vague dress code. Professionalism has changed over the years and what is allowed and what is acceptable. And so when we leave vague statements of will be appropriate for the functions performed, we're finding that our HR consultant is telling us to give clear and concise, sometimes even pictures of this is what's allowed in this environment, to really try to negate staffing issues moving forward. So just things like that that I thought as a council, if this is our document, we want to be aware of so that we can not only support staff, but the leadership to make sure that they can address issues that may come up and have a document that really supports them adhering to a policy. And then on page 11 or page 125,
I'm sorry, how do we get 11 or 125?
so
The
the policy has a
Policy
page
itself has
number
a
and then
and then
the packet has a,
packet has a page.
so if are you getting it off of Drive?
Yes.
Okay,
I
so
don't
page
get paper
11.
anymore.
Huh?
I don't get paper anymore, so what is page, is it 121?
27.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know where you're pulling it off of, so. I printed this because I was screenshotting too many notes to myself, so. It's page 11 of the personnel policy. Statements,
Under workplace violence, section 202.
no, it's under job performance.
Okay.
Employees may be disciplined for poor job performance, including but not limited to the following: unsatisfactory work quality or quantity, excessive absenteeism. Those statements of may just open up a lot of issues for leadership to be able to adhere to the disciplinary procedure. And it also allows for staff to feel and can build animosity that when it says may and somebody has poor performance or excessive absenteeism and a supervisor chooses to discipline one but not the other. And so just having a more not so permissive language allows just for a clearer picture for employees. So it's really, as I read through this, and this was not, nobody was immune to this as we read through this and read through our own policies, and as we went into, it really came from a conversation about leadership. And the reason why I thought that it was a good time for us to bring this up is that we do have people in new positions and in new leadership positions, and so to give them a document that really guides them and allows them that process and clear language to say this is the expectation that is from the council to staff to managers on down, that we're giving them clear language. So that was really why I wanted to have this discussion of, this is our document, meaning we want to help guide the staff, and the HR department does a great job. I mean, everything that you could think of is in this, obviously down to, testing procedures, et cetera. It's just as we dive into new generations of employees, really tightening up that language allows for accountability of everybody involved, not just the employee subordinate, but the leadership as well. And as I look forward to Lewiston's future, we have a lot of people moving into leadership positions, and I want to make sure they have a document that they can stand on to make sure that their staff understand fully their role and their expectations in regards to all these areas. And then obviously, we know that certain collective bargaining groups aren't under this, but it's a start, and really that's all I wanted to bring to the council's attention, was that I think everybody no matter if you're private business, nonprofit, anybody with a set of policies and procedures are looking to tightening that language so that we're protecting everybody involved and giving employees a chance to work towards a goal, and show that work ethic and competency are the top of what we do. So that's really all I wanted to present as we move into the new year. I know this comes up in the first quarter of the calendar year usually, so wanted to make you aware of things of that nature, and I can certainly share some of the notes and documents that I pulled. I just didn't get them set out in time.
Counselor Spicklemeyer?
Mark, so, Counselor, so how did you wanna move forward with it? I mean,
Well, I think just, you know, when it comes, I can share this information with Nikki, as she, I'm sure this is what she does. She's probably hearing the same thing. I think I wanted it to be that we review it, catch some things, really just ask staff the questions of, if this was your personnel manual, where would your questions come from? And if you read something that was confusing, so that we can help develop the language that needs to be there. I don't know that it necessarily needs to be a work group. I'm sure we all, contrary to popular belief, read every page that's sent to us, but, and you can see that I write notes all over and tend to have questions for staff. A week out is always a little premature, so I wanted to give us this opportunity to read it, be able to say, hey, Nikki, when you review this with your staff, here's some questions we have that she can address.
Counselor Townsley?
Yeah, but I truly understand where you're coming from and what you're saying as a position of leadership. Are you saying everywhere in this document where it says may, we change it to shall? Is that?
Well, I don't know, I don't have that count, but there was a couple. There was one that said, we may check to make sure you have a valid driver's license. If that person's a driver, that should probably not be a permissive may.
It should be shall.
So it really is, it's about the statement being made, and that's where, and again, I can share where I highlighted, and I probably did miss some, because
Sure.
you get hyper-focused on making sure I understood the language that was coming from the staff. And again, this is just, this is a great document. It's just, these are the things that have been coming up. So I wanted us to be well aware so that we can support Nikki, because I know if I write a document, I know what I want it to say. But you may read it and catch 7 errors of things that I'm like, that is just
Sure.
typed out, right? So I wanna make sure that we're supporting the staff the best way we can.
I understand. I'm concerned with taking leadership's role. In essence, it's almost, if it's a carte blanche of shall to will, or shall from may, it kind of takes leadership out. Leadership no longer has anything to say about it or do about it. There's no discretion involved in any exchanges with employees. And so I think we have to be careful. I'm not saying not examine it, but I think we have to be careful to allow leadership within the city to make some judgment calls, because that's why we put them in those positions. So
And the statements are really not like, you know, you toe the line. The statements are, shall verify that this has happened, or right now it's may. The other ones.
yeah, and if you go back and you give instances of specific things, I think probably would come to a consensus on that.
And I can certainly show, and again, the big one that I really went into this for was, the feds are pushing for, new overtime rule, and that's why I have a state association. We pulled from cities, we pulled from state agencies to make sure that what were we looking at as the state of Idaho, as if and essentially it's a wage expectation that nobody's salary can make under $55,000 a year. Right now, it's 35 something, I think. So it's a big jump. So was this going to affect city staff that might have been exempt at one time? I happened to be in the document and then came in, that conversation continued into what we talked about earlier. I didn't find anybody that would be affected by that overtime rule of the city as far as the steps. Now, I could have been misreading, but again, I'm sure Nikki's well aware and on top of that. I just thought this truly is our document. So when we approve it, I want us to make sure we understand it and that we're making sure that we're helping them protect them, both sides of the agreement.
Is there an action that you want city council to take with this?
I mean, to direct you guys to read it.
I did.
You know, if I could just
I did.
intervene, so, you know, maybe if the council wanted to say, look at potential updates to the plan in December, we'll all be here in December. You could come up with your ideas, you can submit them to me or maybe submit them to HR. Say, well, I got a concern or question about this, and then if we have like a working session or something like that, you know, those can be made in the form of motions or something. I'd like to change this to that, because it is your document, you approve it, council. And somebody may have an idea that doesn't get supported, that's fine, but at least you're giving it a fresh look, you know, and there may be nothing. But that would be one way to do that, without having to schedule this, you know, several times. Just say, well, maybe in December we'll have a work session on the personnel policy manual, bring your suggested changes, you can discuss them and make a motion on them, and they pass or they don't, and then we move on. Which I think is good. It's good to always kind of review these things if there are questions. So,
Mayor,
Councilor Forsman?
might be a silly question, but have we asked HR or even legal, maybe if they had a reason why they used those words?
Well, Counselor, I don't have an answer for that, but
Again, I have not asked them. This is, I asked for this to be on. There was several things that came up, and including our last meeting that delayed my ability to get this document to Nikki. So I apologize but I wanted, the bulk of this was that to make sure that we understood that we approve this needs, you know, we need to be involved, is basically my point.
Yeah, I read it when we first went over it. I've read it one other time, didn't read it just recently, going through it. But that would be interesting to know is kind of just firsthand what reasonings they use certain verbs, vocabulary, maybe there was a reason behind that. And then after hearing that, if maybe there was things that missed, then looking back through it and possibly changing things. But I just want to make sure that we're addressing it to them first to give them a chance to, maybe they already have thought of these things.
Counselor, if we have, we the council have suggested changes for consideration, I think at that time we would certainly ask legal or HR to give us their opinion on that from an HR standpoint, why it may be wise or not wise to change a word or words in there. So. Okay, Counselor, we're going to move on to the next item, discussion item E, sanitation recycling discussion. We have Director Johnson here, overview and discussion on the City of Lewiston sanitation and recycling services. Again, this is an action item, should you decide to take action. Counselor, or Director Johnson, welcome.
Good afternoon, evening, Mayor, City Council, Dustin Johnson, Public Works Director. Going to talk to you a little bit about sanitation this afternoon. One thing, and I'm sure you all recognize this by this point of your term, that Public Works is divided into multiple departments, and sanitation is the one that is farmed out the most. We have the most contracts, and we have, I think, 4 or 5 employees at the transfer station, but that's all we have for employees in that department. So the bulk of our services provided in the city of Lewiston in sanitation is contracted out. So a lot of these contracts is just, that's what we do with this aspect of our department, is manage these contracts. And so I don't think I've come before this group and talked about sanitation yet, so I thought today would be a good time. One, there's a contract that's set to expire, so I can give you a little background on that. And on the back end, I'd give you a little bit more understanding of kind of the challenges that we're facing as a community when it comes to some of our sanitation, recycling, and other services that we have. So there's a lot of, I mean, if you, in the packet, you saw there was a lot of spreadsheets, or a lot of tables, a lot of charts, a lot of data. My intent is not to blur your eyeballs with all of the data, but more of using that as a reference so you can see trends, or, you know, basically where the tonnages is coming from, where the money is going, and who are the actual users of some of these services. So the reason I'm here and the timeliness of today is we have a composting contract. The name is changed a couple times during the term of the contract: Lake Tahoe Sanitation, Clearwater Composting, Inland Northwest Waste. For today, I'll just call them the contractor. If you've ever used their services or gone out to their site, it's out East Main, Mill Road. You can see on the map there, kind of way tucked back in that corner there behind Clearwater Paper up on the hill there. We've been contracted with them for 10 years, so it is a 10-year contract. It consists of two different services. One is biosolids composting, so wastewater treatment. So now we're going into another area of public works. Basically, as we treat wastewater, what is left over and not discharged in the river comes out as biosolids. So the Tribune did a story a couple months ago and kind of gave a tour of the plant, and you saw it looks like potting soil. It's been treated, and it's great for composting. So they charge us, but we ship it over to them for the biosolids composting, and then I'll get into the other services they provide later, but those services are adjusted by CPI as according to the contract. Now, the terms of the contract state we need to notify them if we're going to expand this contract by the end of this calendar year. So we have to let them know if we're interested in extending it by the end of this year. If we choose not to, the contract will continue along for another calendar year, and then we will end our relationship with them on December 31st, 2024. In the current contract, there are 2 extension clauses for 5 years. So we can extend it through, now I'm trying to do math on the fly here, 2028. And for 5 years, and then there's another second clause that we could extend it for another year beyond that, so then it would terminate at 2043, and then the services would end in 2035, 10 years from now, so we can extend it additionally 2 more 5-year terms. So the biosolids, what's interesting is you can notice that the tonnages, so this is just throughout the year. This is by our fiscal year, not calendar year. But with all the upgrades we've had at the plant, not a significant change in our biosolids tonnage. That we basically, an average, give or take, 3,000 tons a year, roughly, depending on the CPI rate, anywhere from the low end of 150 to about $176,000 a year. And so those are built into your wastewater rates, paid through the Wastewater Enterprise Fund. And we haul those. We have a dump truck out at the plant. We're working on a tour to show you our new plant out there. And the biosolids just discharge directly into a dump truck, and then we drive that out to their facility, and they take care of it from there. And that's roughly 2 to 3 dump trucks a day. So, on a wet day, we can sit. Actually, take that back. I'll get back to you on the tonnage. I'll have to do that. Trying to do math on the fly of how many dump trucks that is based off an annual tonnage, but it's a couple dump trucks a week. So then moving on to yard waste. So this is the sanitation component. So all of our yard waste, so we have several different components, and I'll get into each of those. But we contract with them for our yard waste. So yard clippings, leaves, small caliber tree clippings, vegetation waste. And you can see the tonnages on that. So that is Sunshine Disposal is our another contractor that does curbside waste yard waste clean pickup. That is our tonnages. You can see they've grown a little bit since the contract started. What was amazing for sanitation was apparently COVID was when everybody cleaned out their garages and did all their yard work for the preceding decades. And so you'll see a little spike in 2020 and it kind of held high all the way through. And then once people could go out in public, we quit maintaining our yards and quit cleaning our garages. So you can see that spike there, but it's roughly 5,000 to almost 6,000 tons a year. You can see what we pay. So that is what we pay for the curbside pickup. And that's obviously pretty easy to weigh. That's coming right out of the sunshine disposal trucks. Oops, we jumped a little bit more. Sunshine. And so to give you a little bit of look at what we do, generally the sanitation, oh, we're a little bit out of order. I apologize for that. I must have been doing some editing. This goes back to the sanitation. Sorry, I can't read this. Yard waste. So yard waste, yes. So the contract that we have with the contractor for for composting is roughly 10% of our sanitation, all of our contracts. So they are 10% of our contracts. If you consider the bulk of our contracting goes to Sunshine Disposal for obvious reasons. They do all the pickup and hauling, and then Asokan County landfill are our two big ones. Whereas the contractor that we're talking about today, Clearwater Compost, is about 10% of that. So, and that's basically the gist of what I have to talk about today. There, for some reason, the slides didn't show up, but they're breakdowns of the other users that use that. So I've already shown you the big users are the yard waste from the Sunshine Disposal. Parks and Rec use the same for using their yard waste. The street department uses a little bit, as we talked about previously, for cleaning up the right-of-way. We use that, just a small amount of tonnage. All of this information was in your packet. And then self-hauler is the other big component. And self-haulers typically average about 3,200 to about 4,500 tons a year annually. And according to the contract, if you have a City of Lewiston utility bill, you dump for free. I mean, the cost is passed on, but that's covered as part of your sanitation. Same thing with the with the transfer station. You get to use the transfer station for free and Clearwater Compost for free. I mean, it's not free, it's just built into your sanitation bill. So, as I said, the contract is due up. We have not had, I wanted to speak with you. We've gone to Public Works Advisory Council and walked through the contract, got some good feedback from them. Now I'm coming to council just to generally get some feedback if we're going in the right direction or if we should veer off in any other direction. My instinct is to reach out to them, talk about what terms they may want to modify. If they want to modify anything, we have a CPI escalator in that contract. So to see if there's any terms that they want to change and see if we can agree to an additional 5-year extension on this contract. So that's option one. Option two is to say, no, we're gonna cancel. And if you cancel, we just let the clock play out and our services would end December 31st, 2024. So that gives us a month or a year and 2 months to either say we're not gonna be in the composting business anymore and the customers of Lewiston can figure out what they wanna do, or we go out for another RFP and see what other agencies or entities would want to come up with a compost contract and provide a similar service. I'm not aware of any out there, at least in the valley. There are obviously other areas that we could pursue, but those are kind of the three options. So I have a little bit more to talk about, but we can stop now if there's any questions regarding the existing contract with this contract.
Councilors? Councilor Townsley?
Director Johnson, do you have any reason for us to consider anyone else?
I mean, cost is always the thing. Can we get better service cheaper from someone else? And that until you go out shopping, you don't know. And without having any conversations with them about extending this for another 5 years, I don't know what those costs are. So, that everything's in flux right now. I'll get into some other numbers that are in flux and kind of show you, sanitation is in a strange area right now, mostly recycling, but specifically composting in the area here. So that's why I say my recommendation from staff's perspective is let's good faith negotiate and see what we find out. And I'll obviously come back, and we're not gonna sign any extension or any contract without the council is ultimately gonna be the ones that decide it. But here we are, beginning of October, we have October, November, December before we're really forced to make a decision. But I wanted to get out in front of you to see, we're fortunate, this contract was signed when our old sanitation manager was employed with the city, and fortunately, we keep him around here for other things now, so, if there's any feedback from our ex-sanitation manager, but, so that's kind of the spitball answer there, that I don't have anything specifically other than the same old question, can we get better service for cheaper? And I think you do that with any contract.
Counselor Speckelmeyer?
Mayor, so Director, it's kind of both sides entities need one another. If it wasn't for the city, that contractor basically couldn't exist, correct?
Correct. I mean, I'm not gonna say that, but I would have a hard time figuring out, yes, where that would come from.
Mayor.
Counselor Forsman?
I definitely have a hard time just taking that service away, and especially if there's citizens that like using it. I know I like using it when I have to do my grass and stuff, and so not sure without even having that as a public to be able to give their input on that, obviously. But I think it would be good to go in with good faith and try to negotiate and look around and see what we can find would be, in my preferable option.
I'll take that as a move ahead and negotiate and report back. The one other, there's the next item, number 2, is single stream recycling. This has been kind of a long, going back, and I think it was, I scratch in my head, I think it was late 19, it was pre-COVID. If you remember nationally, China stopped accepting a lot of United States recycling commodities, and so that made recycling, metals, cardboard, plastics, the commodity market went in the gutter, and so there was a period of time where there was no value in recycling, and people stopped accepting it, and that was before my time with the city. But the city did do a kind of a general survey out to the public and asked them. I believe that information was included in your packet, kind of a synopsis of what they provided, and the public said they were willing to pay for a surcharge to keep recycling. And, there was more about the use of the transfer station. But at that point, that was more of a gauge of what services is the public want and what services are the public willing to pay more or less, or what would they be willing to sacrifice and what would they be willing to pay for a particular service. So in 2019, the city implemented a recycling surcharge, and I can't remember, it's again in the packet, but $2-ish a month to maintain that balance of what it was costing to process single stream recycling. And so just that table in front of you there, going back to FY20, you can see that is how much the city pays each month, because the commodity values go up and down. So each month we get a price of what it costs to process the tonnage of recycling. So we collect it, we bale it, we ship it to Spokane, it's sorted, and then based off of what they return off of those commodities, then we get a bill of how much that processing fee was per ton. So you can see in FY20, it was $114 all the way up to $130 a ton to process. There's a measure within the contract with SDI, who again, they are a contractor that goes curbside pickup, takes it to be baled and then hauled to Spokane. There's a section in the contract that says if the processing fee exceeds $135 a ton, the city may say, dump it on the floor, put it in the landfill. And we've only had to do that once, and that was when the baler was broke. So, but I wanted to bring this to your attention because you can see FY '20, we had that surcharge, and through the course of the year or years of FY '20 and FY '21, you saw the commodity values as late, so September of '21, we were only paying $6 a ton for processing. So then here I come in and I'm the dummy in the room. And so we look at kind of the reserves that we're managing within the sanitation, particularly the recycling, but the sanitation reserves. And we get to August of 2022. So this was last summer adopting budgets for FY '23. And we look at the last 2 years of commodity values and we say, we're now stabilized, we can get rid of that recycling surcharge. So we didn't have to raise sanitation rates because we were getting low dollars amount for processing fees. So on August, end of August, we adopted new sanitation rates that did not increase and eliminated the recycling surcharge. And then you can see what happened after that. We then spiked at $149 a ton for processing, and we've been over $100 a ton for processing since. I'm not saying that we need to take any action today. I'm just bringing that to your attention that as time goes by, all of these enterprise funds, sanitation being one, we have reserves and we have money, but that is built up in the rates. And so we have to we either have to subsidize it through sanitation rates, or we have to find a way to make it pay for itself by either another recycling surcharge. I'm not saying we have to do anything like that right now. I'm just saying right now, after we've made the decision to lower or eliminate that surcharge, the market rates have gone up. So I'm not really asking for any action today. I'm just bringing that to your attention that there may be a bigger discussion coming if these values continue to stay north of $100 a ton. We may have to come back and have a bigger discussion. Like I said, there's a cost of service. Is the public willing to pay for it? Are we going to get rid of it? Or what does that look like? So that's all I really have to say about recycling. If there's any questions on.
Councilor Specklemeyer?
Hey, so Director, how much does it cost to haul it to the landfill?
$50 a ton, whatever the tipping fee is over there. So I think it's 49 something a ton. So yeah, you always figure if it's you're making money when it's under $49 a ton. But it's been fairly rare. Yeah, in my time in the industry, recycling has never paid for itself. There's been this mindset, and from that we're recouping. Every time somebody recycles a aluminum can, that the city's pocketing that money, and we don't make money off recycling.
The environment does.
Councilor Towsley?
Your perspective and opinion, why in 2020, for the last, I don't know how long, have we as a nation had to ship our recycled stuff to a foreign country to have them turn it into something else to sell it back to us? Why aren't we doing that here?
That's, money. It goes to why are all our goods manufactured in China? Somebody can, it's a market balance. If somebody can provide you a service cheaper somewhere else, you're gonna go there. And when that stopped, there is money. There is definitely money in processing this and recycling. It's just having that door slam so quickly. There was no market, and I think you're seeing. I'm not sure exactly why the rates are so high in the last year. That might be a local issue, but you saw over time after China closed the door, local industries, industrious minds figured out people want to recycle. There's now some of the competition is no longer there. I may not be able to provide the same service at the same cost, but I can provide the same service. And I think you're starting to see them move that direction. It's just the inconvenience of the global shift, whether it's what's going on in China, what's going on with COVID, what's going on with inflation now. Things have been very difficult to find moderation right now.
We just see ourselves as, I mean, we as a people always see ourselves as the innovators of the planet. And I'm just surprised that we haven't innovated.
I think we're getting there. I mean, it's, we can
The
talk.
idea that aluminum can that I use and throw in the trash that you guys deal with goes somewhere else, shipped using fuel to get it there, is just, yeah.
It is mind-boggling to me, and it kind of goes to, we have space here, you know, so shipping, one of mine is glass. Glass is so heavy, and we're gonna ship it to, you know, to go glass to glass may not be the most economical use for here. Maybe great in Seattle or San Francisco, but it's not great here, I don't think. But that's an you know, each plastic is a unique one, where, you know, that is in its own case. Cardboard, paper, that's an easy one, that can be really recycled really easily. So it's not, there's so many components in there, there's not a silver bullet to fix it.
Councilors, I think I'm gonna keep us moving here. We've got quite a bit more to get through yet today. Director, I would make a suggestion that when you come back to the council to talk about these recycling things, maybe invite Sean McCabe from Sunshine Disposal. I visited with him recently about where our recyclables go and what's really happening to them. So we may not be getting what we think we're paying for.
Yeah, Sean was sat in on the Public Works Advisory Council.
Yeah, thank you.
Real quick, last bullet item is, the other biggest contract is a Stoughton County landfill contract is due up in 2025. So that is one where, I know there is plenty of space available in that landfill. I'd have to go back and get, you know, truth out their numbers, but several decades left into it. Stoughton County, City of Lewiston is roughly 60 to 65% of their waste stream. So they are, I mean, I came from there, so I can tell you they're interested in keeping us as a customer. So, and in fact, that was the first thing I did when I got to the Valley was negotiate that contract. So you now know that I've been here for 10 years and I can negotiate it from the other side of the river. But I just wanted to give you heads up that landfill contracts are based off of operations, closure cost, and post-closure monitoring. And so it's all baked into an accounting number, and so you track all of your costs and all of your future costs. And, you know, ecology makes you carry a bankroll of a certain amount to make sure that you are going to do what you say you're gonna do and do the environmentally right thing to do is close that. So that's all baked into it. I know there will be an increase in the tipping fee. I don't, last conversation I've had, which has been a little while, I don't expect it to be a huge increase, but that's all dictated by market rate of what it costs to run a landfill. So just an FYI to you that those are the three big things that you'll be seeing in the future when it comes to sanitation.
Thank you, Director. You have item F, Transportation Project Update. This is exciting news.
This is great. I am very excited to be here today. Two items. So the two things that I have told you from the beginning, the two roads that we get the most complaints about are the ruts of 21st Street and the ruts on 5th and Bryden. If you've been out and about, you've probably noticed the construction going on 21st Street. That is a two-phase project. So I have gotten a couple phone calls saying those patches don't look great. You should hold their feet to the fire. Those patches are the first phase. So this first phase will go through about November. They are going up the hill, working on cutting out the rotten sections and compacting it, putting back some good better base, and then patching that back, and then going all the way up there. And then once there'll be a little bit of overlap, but they'll also be doing the concrete work. We're required to replace all the non-conforming ADA ramps. So I think there's roughly 32 ADA ramps. So all of those businesses, all those intersections, you'll see new concrete pedestrian ramps being put in. Basically, I think they'll be starting here pretty soon, should wrap up mid-November. So that will close that project out for phase one. Next spring, summer, as soon as the temperatures warm up, they will be coming back and milling out a bunch of that and then overlaying that with that structural fiber slurry that we've talked about. And then, so that project, 21st Street, I'm looking forward to in June. We'll have black pavement, a nice fancy coat of paint and new ped ramps. And so I don't like to call that a Band-Aid fix. It's somewhat experimental, but it should get us north of 10, 15 years, enough time where we can look at a full reconstruction and budget it and plan accordingly. But this is it's a $3 million job, so it's not just a Band-Aid. So that's 21st Street, 2 phases moving forward, should be done by early next summer. The other project, 5th and Bryden, that one is a more traditional project where we're gonna go in there and mill out all of those ruts. So if you take 5th and you go across Bryden, you play the Dukes of Hazzard theme as you go across there. I've gotten that, I will say, the number one complaint is that intersection. And so a week from today, we are milling that out and fixing that intersection. So that is the good news. The bad news is that intersection has to be closed for 1 day, maybe 2. We're scheduling it for 2 days, hopefully that we can get most, if not all of the work done in 1 day. There is no, and I will tell you, I've already warned the mayor, there is no way to easily detour that traffic. It is, I think, probably the busiest intersection in town. You've got at least 3 businesses on all, there's 1 vacant, and then the rest, dentist office and 2 gas stations. We've already sent them mailers, we've sent them additional information. We're trying to make sure the public knows, if you can avoid that intersection, please do, a week from today, October 9th. And that's when we will be out there doing that work. So it's unfortunate that we will inconvenience the public, but hopefully everybody will be happy when we're out of there. So that's the update. Any questions on any of that?
Mayor?
Councilor Spiegelmeier.
Just a comment, I like, seeing some local contractors involved in it, so.
Yeah, outside of the specialized fiber slurry, everybody we're using is a local contractor.
Councilor Forsman.
Oh, just a comment also. Just last week, actually, I watched a trailer go across 5th and Bryden, and all of the stuff out of his trailer jumped out into the street because his trailer pretty much fell apart. And so we ran out to help him get it all. And my husband likes to point out that I'm on council. He's like, well, if those councils would fix the road. So I had to be like, I promise it's in the works, so.
Yeah, and I will say that got bad, and I hope that there will always be ruts, there will always be potholes, and as a public works director, I will wear it, but that was one that I hope we never have get to that degree. Thank you.
Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Councilors, next up, we have item G, Historic Preservation Plan, introduction to the Historic Preservation Plan for the City of Lewiston, which will provide guidance and decisions regarding historic properties and future preservation priorities. This is an action item. We have Engineering Project Supervisor Lana Bailey with us here. Supervisor Bailey, if you'd please introduce yourself for the record, and remember to speak up loudly and clearly. The microphones are above your head so those at home can hear what you have to say. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Alana Bailey, Engineering Project Supervisor for Water and Transportation Projects. So I'm going to present in conjunction with the people that know what the plan has. I'm involved because we did a water project that had SRF funds. Back in October 2019, the city signed an agreement for multiple water projects for $40 million plus dollars, and part of that was you had to make sure you were not doing any kind of environmental adverse effects as you're completing these projects. So there were a couple adverse effects identified at the water treatment plant from 2 demolitions, demolition of the filter plant and demolition of an admin building. So working with SHPO and DEQ, they identified as mitigation for that demolition, we needed to complete a historic preservation plan. We had 5 years to complete it from the time of the signing of that agreement. We signed the agreement, we immediately got into work with Cultural Resources. They're out of Seattle area. They were the one person we could find that was willing to do this. So it was a pretty big lift just to get a contractor on board to start the work. They're under contract currently for about $22,000. They spent most of it. We're trying to finish it up now. Luckily, I got the Historic Preservation Commission to jump on board for this plan and take it from, once we had a contract with Cultural Resources, to start building the plan. So I have Joel here with Community Development to kind of walk through what's in the plan and how it's going to benefit the city.
Joel. Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. I'm Joel Plaskon, Lewiston City Planner. After Public Works engaged a consultant to help with this plan, that consultant, Cultural Reconnaissance, worked with city staff, the Historic Preservation Commission, the State Historic Preservation Office, and residents of the community and business owners in the community, the general public, to create the historic preservation plan that's been provided to you in your packets today. This plan is, it's consisting of a number of chapters: purpose and process, historic context and circulation patterns, history of historic preservation in the state. It talks about the application of our standards relative to design review for certificates of appropriateness, architectural styles that exist in the community historically, as well as community values and priorities. There's a geographic analysis in there relative to historic preservation. And then part 8 is the real meat and potatoes of this plan. That's historic preservation goals and objectives. And so that's where the implementation is called out. So just to give you a little bit more information about it, the purpose of the plan is to lay out a process for identifying and protecting buildings and resources that contribute to the unique sense of place in the Lewiston community due to their age and architectural features, or association with individuals or groups who played a significant role in the events associated with the community and its history. It's intended to identify community goals related to historic preservation and provide a framework for policy for decisions that impact historic resources. So that's really kind of dealt with more in section 8, where it talks about what the goals and the objectives are. Those goals and objectives, and they're introduced beginning on page 69 of the plan, are broken into 4 primary categories, which are identification, documentation, protection, and education. A little bit more explicitly, the first goal is to identify and document the city's historic and cultural resources. The second one is to protect the city's historic cultural resources. The third one is to promote historic preservation by developing mutually beneficial partnerships with local communities and advocacy groups. And then the fourth and the final goal is to inform and engage the people of Lewiston to better integrate historic preservation for the education, enjoyment, and welfare of the community. So each of those goals has a number of objectives or policies associated with them, which are laid out in that chapter of the plan. This plan is, it has been already reviewed on multiple occasions by the Historic Preservation Commission as well as by the State Historic Preservation Office. Both of those groups, in conjunction with staff, have made edits to the plan. There have been several versions of it to refine it and to improve it. It is based also in part on a survey of community members, so it's got public input. And it's currently scheduled for council's approval at your October 23rd meeting. We wanted to bring it to you in advance of that in case you had changes you wanted to make to it. We had time to do that and keep the whole thing on track for approval as soon as possible. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Joel. Council members? Thank you for bringing it to us. I think very proactive and a good move. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Towsley, did you have a question?
Oh, I just appreciate the information that you've put into this, and I think it's a great document that the city of Lewiston would be good. I hope that they will be promoted so that everyone sees it. The more input, the better, right?
Yep, it will get promoted.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Forsman?
Oh, I was walking down on Main Street and then I saw the little QR codes and I got super excited. I forgot that was becoming a thing, and I'm like, oh, this is so cool that you could just put your QR code and learn some history about our wonderful Lewiston. So that's a super cool touch. And
Was
I've not
that
seen
one of the ones on plaque on the building?
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. That's
It's
the
very-
plaques project, yep.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was awesome.
Okay, good. I'm glad you liked it.
Thank you, Joel. Councilors, next up, we have item H, Community Drive Reservoir Tank logo. Considering approval of the logo design for the Community Drive Reservoir Tank action item, we have our Public Information Officer, Carol Mauer, here with us today. Carol, you know the routine. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. Carol Mauer, your City Public Information Officer. So there's actually 2 items on your agenda today related to this project, the Community Drive Reservoir Tank Branding Project. The first item, the one we're on right now, is, as the mayor stated, is just related to the design. The next item is related to the Memorandum of Understanding regarding that design. So I thought I would just go over a few things with you ahead of showing the design, which you all received just a few days ago, 2 different images. So the goal of this project, well, I'll go back a little bit. So you've all heard from Director Barker regarding the tri-partnership site. You've read documents about where that came from, how it came to be, some goals behind that location in the community, and how it can really propel us forward. So this branding opportunity, really the goal for this was to emphasize the educational and recreational opportunities up at the site, as well as our strong relationship and collaboration with the other 2 partners, Lewis Clark State College and the Lewiston School District. So let me pull up. Okay, so we've got 2 images here, so let me explain a little bit about what you're looking at. So this is the reservoir tank, and it's got the 3 logos with the 3 entities, and this is just one side of the tank. Some of the information that you received in your in the Memorandum of Understanding includes the size of these logos, and this image right here represents how we envision them, the placement of them on the tank. This is just one side. The other 3 logos are on the opposite side. There's a few things that we had to take into consideration in terms of the placement of each logo. As you can see in the images, there is a ladder on one side of the tank, and so we didn't want to try to put anything over that, under that, mess with that in any way. There's also a downspout on the other side, and a few other things. So when you're looking at these images, and I'll go to the other one. So this aerial is just to show you the location of those logos. We're not putting any logos on the top of the tank. So I know that might have been a little confusing, but that's what this aerial is demonstrating. So the reason for some of the spacing is because of some of those important elements for the function of the tank that we're trying to avoid. We just met last week up at the site, all 3 tri-partners, and walked all around the tank and figured out exactly where these logos would go, what size they would be, and with the potential vendor, talked about material. The plan is to use a weather-resistant vinyl. It's actually what's called a tile placement. So they'll go up there by hand and place all these tiles, which addresses one concern that we had in discussing this project was if one of the logos needs to be removed, can that be done? Yes, it can. So each one of those logos will be about 20 feet-ish, because not all of our logos are the same dimensions. And I think I already stated this, but that weather-resistant vinyl should last between 15 and 20 years, or whenever they might need to be removed for a project or updating the tank in any way. In your Memorandum of Understanding, we also brought forward the quote.
Carol, we need to just talk about the local design, then we can get into the MOU and what's contained in the MOU next.
Okay, if that's how you'd like to proceed. Is that fine?
So let's just talk about the logo
Okay,
design, please.
so, yes, so just the design itself, at the beginning I stated the purpose for it. And so if council has any questions about the design, thoughts, concerns?
Councilors? I
take no concerns as an approval.
Councilor Towsley?
I saw a cost.
Yes, Mayor would like to talk about that for the next item.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. No, I
However-
think the design looks great.
Okay.
Councilor Forsman?
It looks good. You're saying approval wise, it looks good. Like it.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Lidke?
I would move to approve the logo design for the community park, or excuse me, Community Drive Reservoir Tank.
Okay.
It's been moved by Councilor Lidke, second by Councilor Towsley to approve the logo design for the Community Drive Reservoir Tank. Is there further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, councilors.
Thank you.
Item I, Carol, please introduce yourself again. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Carol Mauer, Public Information Officer. So this item pertaining to the Memorandum of Understanding lays out the details regarding the project, the cost, the size, material, some of the stuff we just discussed. So ultimately, what was provided to you, the estimated project cost is $20,328. This does not include the potential cost for a lift needed for the placement of those tiles. However, we do have some costs associated with that, so including that, each entity will be paying a portion of that, so that is not all on the city. So it would be roughly $7,000 for the city of Lewiston, equally distributed to all three entities.
Councilors, Councilor Forsman?
Sorry, I didn't realize we were questions now. I had the memorandum up here, and now I don't know where it's at, but if I remember, it had something in there about not legally binding or not held to language.
Sure, so essentially, and our legal might be able to comment on this better than I can, but essentially, if we need to take it down for any reason, maybe Public Works needs to make an adjustment to the tank or something, we can do that.
Okay, so that kind of protects all involved, so it's more of a benefit for all involved, basically.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
Brianne Drury, Assistant City Attorney. I believe what you were getting at is a contract versus an MOU, so a memorandum of understanding. So if somebody breaches it, we could not bring it to a court and have it enforced. That's the difference between an MOU and a contract. The city enters into MOUs with certain entities that we have a great working relationship with. And staff will direct us to draft a memorandum of understanding versus a contract. And it is my understanding that that's what staff wanted to do under this circumstance.
Councilor Towsley?
Mr. Mayor, that property is part of the community part, overall property, is that correct?
That would be a question for Carol.
Yes, that is the city's property.
So we own the property.
Correct.
We paid for the property.
Correct.
We paid for the water tank, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yes. I'd be a lot happier if the other two entities paid for this, because we paid for everything else, the surface and everything else. I mean, I'm not gonna quibble over $7,000 in our budget, but it would feel better in my mind. But just a comment.
Councilor Forsman?
This is a silly question, really, because it probably would never happen. But what if for some reason they put a logo on there that wasn't what we expected, but we don't have a contract now, so we just have a, whatever you call that term,
MOI.
MOI. What happens?
So, I guess essentially, I don't expect that to happen, only because we are each providing our logos in a specific file format. And then the selected design firm will provide a mock-up to us, which will be very similar to this, and we'll approve of that. And so, for example, I guess if they put up something was printed inaccurately or didn't go with one of our branding guides or something, we've got some mechanisms in place to avoid that.
Councilor Lidke?
I didn't have a question, until you just, so this is not the final design?
This is the final design. So we've put together this rendering, and so we will not change the location of any of the logos if it is approved by council today, which is what you just approved, but as well as the memorandum of understanding. This is the picture is not perfect per, every inch of the water tower, but that's, so like you see how some of those logos are maybe 10 or so feet off the ground, that will be where they will go on the water tank. And so this is as perfect as we can get it to exactly where they'll be.
So just to clarify, I don't think any of us are gonna go measure unless we're bored, but it's pretty standard logos that we should all be familiar with, so if, right? So we're
Yes.
good.
Yeah.
And we have a great working relationship with both entities, so MOU should be just fine, cause they can't sue us either, right? For any reason, I mean, that came up, I just wanna make sure.
We can tear it down if we want. Counselor Towesley.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the Community Drive Reservoir Tank Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Lewiston, Lewis Clark State College, and the Independent School District Number 1 of Lewiston.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Towesley, second by Counselor Forsman to approve the Community Drive Reservoir Tank Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Lewiston, Lewis Clark State College, and Independent School District Number 1 of Lewiston. Is there further discussion? Mr. Crocky?
Council President Lidkey,
Aye.
Councilor Forsman,
Aye.
Councilor Spicklemeyer,
Aye.
Councilor Towesley,
Aye.
Councilor Schroeder. Aye. Councilor Kleber.
Aye.
Thank you, councilors. Carries. Next item, item J, request to reopen public hearing for
Thanks, Kara.
for VA-02-2023, considering the applicant's request to reopen the public hearing to introduce additional testimony in VA-02-2023 regarding the proposed parcel vacation of Bryden Avenue. This is an action item, and my name's in the parentheses. Councilors, after your decision on this recently, I did receive an email from the applicant who's here with us today, and I'll let him speak in just a minute. And staff, quite honestly, went through a lot of work trying to understand the process and the request by the applicant. We spent some time with our legal department talking about this too. So this is not a public hearing, and so we can't discuss the merits of the application or the contents of the application, but really the process. And so I will do my best to confine our comments to that so we don't get in trouble. In the event that there's further action, then we maintain the integrity of that process. So with that, I will invite Mr. Young to the stand, and if you would just introduce yourself for the record, and remember to speak up clearly, loudly, so that those listening at home in the back room can hear you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and councilors. My name's Dan Young. This is VA 02-2023. You voted on it on Monday night, and due to a misunderstanding and circumstances outside of my control, I was unable to attend the meeting. I was the applicant at the meeting, and I got all the vacation requests signed. After watching the video, I think the council voted correctly based on the information.
Hold on, no, we can't do that. I'm watching my legal. She'll tell me what I
Okay,
can and
so
can't.
I apologize. I
We'll
don't.
retract that statement, but go
Okay,
ahead.
I don't understand the process exactly.
Okay.
But having not been there, I think there was information that I wasn't able to share that may have changed the outcome. So my request is that it be reheard with me in attendance at the meeting, short term.
Why don't we close it there so we don't get in trouble? That's perfect. Thank you, Mr. Young. Councilor Forsman,
Can I make a motion?
motions are always in order.
Motion to reopen the public hearing of VA 02-23 regarding the proposed partial vacation of Bryden Avenue. Second.
It's been moved by Councilor Forsman, second by Councilor Schroeder, to reopen the public hearing for VA-02-2023 regarding the proposed partial vacation of Bryden Avenue. Councilor Kleberg.
When would this happen? We have to we're gonna have to make a publication on a new public hearing.
Jennifer Tangano, Assistant City Attorney for City. we would have to re-follow all of the public notice provisions. So we'll have to mail notices to residents and the applicant within 330 feet with at least 10 days prior to the date of the hearing. We'll have to have 2 publications in the newspaper for 2 consecutive weeks, with the last one being no more than 7 days before the date of the hearing. And then we'd also have to post the property at least, I think it's 7 days before the date of the hearing as well. So we'll have to follow all of those notice provisions that are required under Lewiston City Code and Idaho Code as far as reopening the public hearing.
Mayor,
Councillor Lidkey?
okay, so, want to be clear.
Speak up, Councillor, this is
I-
important.
I just want to be clear, we can reopen this for any reason, or do we need a legality reason to reopen a closed public and decided upon public hearing?
This may be reopened if the city council desires. At any time, and anyone involved, as far as the applicant especially, or some other party that can potentially appeal it, that's an affected party under Idaho Code, does have the opportunity to request additional information being presented to city council. Whether or not that grant is approved is a decision of the city council, because of the fact that the city has gone through and done all of the statutorily required elements as far as sending the notices. My understanding in this particular situation is that Mr. Young did not receive the notice due to circumstances beyond both the city and his control. And we have confirmed through the post office that it wasn't delivered. We actually had to go to the post office to check the status of the letter because it was sent certified with return receipt, so we were able to track it and to determine its location. And for whatever reason, the post office attempted delivery, but never re-attempted delivery, and it was just sitting there. So this is why we've brought it before the city council to see if they would be willing to consider reopening it so that Mr. Young can present his testimony.
Councillor Lidkey?
Okay, thank you. Questions?
Councillors, further questions, comments?
Actually, I do just want to confirm.
Gotta speak up, Councillor.
Can I confirm that we sent out the notices with matching city code or state statute?
Both. So the only difference that city code has is Idaho code only requires the city to send notices to residents within 300 feet, but the city policy is 330 feet. Other than that, our code and state code match. So we did everything that we were required to under both.
Jennifer, is there a difference in the return receipt requirement between state code and city code?
No, state code and city code are the same as far as the notices are required to be sent certified mail with return receipt. And additionally, under state code, the applicant is responsible for the costs of publication and notices.
Further questions, councillors? Okay. Do you have a motion to reopen the public hearing for VA-02-2023 regarding proposed partial vacation of Bryden Avenue? This is a voice vote. Those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you, councillors. Roman numeral 6, unfinished and new business. A, city councilor comments. Comments shall not be related to an item currently before the city council or an item that may come before the city council in the foreseeable future and shall be limited to comments, not discussion.
Mayor.
Councilor Forsman?
Just want to ask the public to get involved if you can, whether that be with a committee or running for council or the many ways that you can be involved. Just as we talked about with the cemetery group, they're lacking people and they need volunteers to help make Lewiston better, and so So I say you get in there and help out if you can.
Okay.
Sorry. No comments. I'm gonna, the next one, I'm sorry.
Okay, item B, city boards and commission liaison updates. Counselor Schroeder.
Thank you. Did have the Envision Lewiston 2024 meeting just a few hours ago here. And we are really, I think, almost close with our participation, but we're moving on. We're gonna have a public outreach on October 18th at the Lewiston Library, and I didn't note the times and I didn't bring that with me, but I believe they were from 11 to 2 and 4 to 7. And they will have the displays of the maps that you can look at and see where we're taking a lot of the future of Lewiston. And so it's gonna be a very exciting time for people to come and get a picture of that. So again, at the Lewiston Library, I believe it probably upstairs in the event room, October 18th. And you can probably check with the library for the exact times, but I believe it's 11 to 2, 4 to 7.
Counselor Townsley.
Let me back up to citizen comments. I mean to city councilor comments, not to citizen comments.
No, we don't want to bring that up, do we?
Please, sir.
Go ahead, Counselor.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone that tomorrow night at the library at 6 o'clock, there is going to be a city council candidate forum put on by the League of Women Voters and LC Chamber of Commerce. I believe that's the correct term. And come with some questions. You can write those out when you get there. You can submit them. You cannot ask during the time. But it's an important time to be able to see how people respond to things like what we've just sat through 2.5 hours, and to see how well they handle those things and see what they're really about. You have 6 or 7, 8 candidates. That's a lot of people, and it's gonna come down to a few votes that could decide people who are gonna serve for 4 years and people who aren't. So if you have any interest in seeing what people have to say and what they're about, I would urge you to come to the library tomorrow at 6. Thank you.
Counselor. Mayor comments, grab a piece of cake. Oh, sorry, Counselor Litkey, go ahead.
Can I have the city boards and commission liaison updates back?
Sure.
I would just wanna congratulate and thank the Airport Authority Board for bringing back a flight from Lewiston to Seattle. I encourage people to get on and see those prices. They are very competitive. Also, they are working with just every entity that they can to make sure that we stay a viable airport, which is truly an asset to our community. But I think that's exciting for people, especially as we have people that need medical appointments in Seattle. We recently had a local fireman that was spent 90, almost 100 days at the hospital. That would have been a great flight for his family to be able to use. So these are things that we need, and I'm proud to say that I've been able to watch them do a lot of work and continue to do so to make improvements. So kudos to them, and those flights start October 9th, so a week from today.
Thank you, Mayor. Comments. Well, next Monday, October 9th, would be a good time to take a flight. That's the first day they operate, and we're gonna have Fifth and Bryant closed, so go to Seattle. Could be a good day to go.
Oh my gosh.
Dustin.
Join the mayor and the public works director. We'll be getting out of town. All right, item D, agenda topics. None? Okay, we'll move on to Roman numeral 7, adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Been moved by Councilor Kleber, second by Councilor Schroeder, to adjourn. Those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we are adjourned. Thank you.